Well, today we cancel Men's Health magazine, which is a publication at this point as concerned with helping men be healthy as, say, Planned Parenthood is with planning parenthood. But perhaps the better comparison is with the magazine Scientific American, which, as we saw a couple weeks ago, has completely abandoned science and replaced it with delusional LGBT propaganda. Men's Health has undergone a similar process of devolution, as evidenced by its advice column Sexplain It, written by a guy named Zachary Zane. Now, Zach, whose picture we'll put up on the screen for reference, describes himself in his bio as a sex writer, author, and ethical boy slut. Now, Zach had to add the word ethical there because he had decided that the term boy slut was somehow not stupid and embarrassing enough on its own. This is, of course, the one skill that most leftists still possess. They are always finding increasingly inane ways of describing themselves. And just when you think that they've come up with a label so bizarre and asinine that it could not possibly be topped, they come along and drop ethical boy slut. So Zach goes on explaining that in his bio, he says, over the years, I've had my fair share of sexual experiences, dating and sleeping with hundreds of people of all genders and orientations. In doing so, I've learned a thing or two about navigating issues in the bedroom and a bunch of other places, TBH. I'm here to answer your most pressing sex questions with thorough, actionable advice. There's no doubt, of course, that he has learned how to navigate certain issues in the bedroom. For example, I'm sure he could tell us which topical ointment is best for treating monkeypox sores. But outside of managing the side effects of the many dozens of diseases this man has most likely contracted over the years, it's not clear what advice he really has to offer, or what why anybody would try to solicit it in the first place. And yet some people do, allegedly, like the guy who sent in this question for the most recent edition of his Sexplain It column. So someone going by the moniker Labels Are Hard writes, quote, Dear Sexplain It, if I'm sexually attracted to people AFAB, which stands for assigned female at birth, because of anatomy, does that make me pansexual? My whole life I've identified as a straight man because I'm sexually attracted to women's bodies. But if I'm attracted to someone AFAB who comes out as a trans man but doesn't choose surgery, does that make me pan or bi? I'm not attracted to people AMAB, assigned male at birth, but I am to certain trans men and NBs, which means non-binary, by the way. If I change my sexual orientation, I feel bad, as if I'm just pretending, so I can encompass their gender identity to be with them. Now, before we get to Zach's answer, it's worth noting that the person who wrote this question, just a small detail here, almost certainly doesn't exist. And I know that because advice columnists frequently invent questions, and also because no straight man in the world feels guilty about being straight, first of all, as this person seems to, nor would any straight man feel that his orientation and sexual behavior requires the blessing of a gay guy in a mesh t-shirt. There is just no heterosexual in existence who's ever said to himself, I think it's okay that I'm attracted to the female form, but I better check with an ethical boy slut first. No, this is a question that Mr. Zane has come up with because he has some thoroughly unsolicited advice that he wants to offer on the subject, and here's what he says. Quote, your attractions technically meet the definition of bisexuality, since you're attracted to vulva owners of multiple genders. But I don't think you're really struggling with how you personally identify. It sounds like you might be fetishizing people with a vulva, and you're wondering how to do that without offending people, especially potential partners who are trans or non-binary. Good. This is something you should care about. Did you get that? If you're attracted to one sex, then you're bisexual. One has become two. Bad news for all the circus performers who've been training on the unicycle their whole lives. It was all a waste of time because every unicycle is now a bicycle. Let me ask you something. What if there was someone out there who kept a log of every single thing you did every minute of the day? I think that'd be pretty creepy. Well, what if I told you that's exactly what happens every time you go online? Your internet provider like AT&T or Comcast is allowed to store logs of every website you've ever visited and can legally sell this data to anybody they want. That's why I always use ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN reroutes your internet connection through their secure servers so your internet provider can't see or log what you do online. Now, many of you might be wondering if I'm routing all my data through a VPN, then doesn't that just mean the VPN can log all my data? And you're right to think that. Many VPNs claim to have a no logs policy, but have been caught logging customer activity anyway. ExpressVPN is the only VPN I trust because they use trusted server technology. Stop letting people keep logs of what you do online. Visit expressvpn.com/MattWalshShow right now and find out how you can get 3 months free at expressvpn.com/MattWalshShow now. Words have no meaning. Numbers have no meaning. Zach continues. There's nothing wrong with having a fetish for a certain body part. I, for example, have a fetish for huge asses. But it's offensive to reduce a person to that sole body part, in this case, their vulva, unless the person is explicitly open to being fetishized in that way. I love when I find a person who wants me to worship their ass or wants me to use them because, as the gay boys say, I'm just a hole, sir. The real key here isn't picking the right label for your orientation. If you list yourself with bi and start matching with trans men and NBs, you can't go around asking them if they have a penis or a vulva down there. That's not only rude, but also potentially triggering for people with gender and body dysmorphia. So go ahead and call yourself bisexual to expand your pool of potential partners, but you must also make it crystal clear in your dating app bio that you're only looking for people with a vulva. This way, the people who swipe right on you are clearly okay with your preferences, and the people who aren't can safely swipe left. I hope you find someone who gets just as turned on by you reducing them to their vulva, but I'll be real with you. The majority of people, cis and trans, aren't down to be fetishized. Your search will be slow going, but at least you won't have to feel bad about pretending anymore. So to review, people attracted to one sex are bisexual. Women are mere vulva owners. Heterosexuality, is a potentially offensive fetish. And straight men are ethically bound to announce themselves because there are some people who may not be okay with that preference. This is all so demented and ridiculous that it may seem unworthy of any response at all, and perhaps it is. But on the other hand, conservatives have made the mistake of not responding to lots of demented things over the years until one day they realized that they probably should have offered some sort of response earlier, and now it's too late. So on that note, I will make a couple of observations here. First, we see here again the resentment and hatred that the LGBT left has for women. Never mind that the phrase vulva owner doesn't even make sense because your body parts are not objects that you own. Okay? They are the things that physically comprise you. They're part of you. They are you, right? Like my hand it's not just this thing that I went and bought at a store. Hey, if you cut my hand off, I wouldn't say, hey, no, don't take that, I own that. No, that's me, that's my body, that's who I am. Now, the greater point here is that they insist that women shouldn't be reduced to their genitals, even as they do exactly that. As always, they're the ones doing the thing they accuse everyone else of doing. Projection, that's all they do. So the boy slut here says that if a man is attracted to women, he must be attracted solely for her genitals. And that's because Zach himself sees women as nothing but genitals, like with a body and brain attached. But in reality, a man is attracted to a female's body. That's true. And it's a good thing that he is, because without that attraction, the human species wouldn't exist. Zach himself would not exist if it wasn't for a long line of men before him who were, according to him, vulva fetishists. But that's not the full story. A man is attracted to a female's body, but is also attracted to everything else about her, right? Her personality, just the way she is, the way she carries herself, the way she speaks, the way she sounds, the totality of her feminine presence. We see women as much more than reproductive organs, and we are drawn in by the whole experience, the whole package. The LGBT left, on the other hand, denies that there is anything more to a woman than her genitals, and then says that even the genitals don't matter. And they do all of this simply so that men can partake in and appropriate womanhood. They reduce women and ultimately erase them, and then accuse us of doing exactly what they have just done themselves. Second, get ready here for another shift, right? Because living in a society run by the left means that you're standing on cultural tectonic plates that are constantly moving around, shifting, jostling, often creating huge earthquakes that can, all at once, completely change the landscape. So here it is happening again. For decades, the left worked to remove the stigma from fetishes and normalize all sexual proclivities and preferences. They said that nobody should feel ashamed of who they love or who they're attracted to. And they largely succeeded in this project and created exactly the sort of profligate, shameless society they wanted. But now they've changed their minds. Because now they say, actually, a fetish is shameful and unnatural. It turns out that not all sexual proclivities are acceptable. It's just that heterosexuality, that is the preference, quote unquote, that sustains human life and upon which human civilization depends, is the shameful, unacceptable fetish. Victorian prudishness is rapidly coming back into style, except in this kind of deranged, demonic form. It is exactly what is natural and healthy and life-sustaining, which is now stigmatized. They insisted that the doors be flung open in the name of inclusion. And they got their way. And they were invited inside. And then they immediately proceeded to kick everybody else out and shut and lock the very doors that they were just demanding be opened. Inclusiveness is the ultimate Trojan horse. If only everybody else would stop falling for it. And also stop reading Men's Health magazine. If anyone actually does read it, which I kind of doubt. But at any rate, it is today canceled. Well, I hope you enjoyed that clip from the Matt Walsh Show. If you did, be sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel and click the notification button to get more content like this. If you want to watch or listen to the full show, head to dailywire.com and subscribe today. You can also listen to my podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.